Welcome to another edition of Chalk or Not, where I try to give you guys the roadmap in terms of how to build the parlays for this upcoming UFC event, which spots that you should tail, which spots you should end up avoiding and hoping that they don't blow up in your face. I'll do my best to give you guys a guide in terms of parlaying some of these spots and which spots you should be taking the chalk on and which ones you should not be taking the chalk on. Reminder, I classify chalk as anything at minus 185 or worse. So I'll only be talking about, I believe, 9 of the 13 fights on this card and quickly going over why I believe they are chalk-worthy or not chalk-worthy. So let's get right into the first fight of the night between Hyun-Sung Park coming in at minus 220 going up against Nyamjagal Tumendembaro. I believe Park is the superior fighter all around. With his speed advantage, his grappling advantage, and his counter-striking, I expect him to really touch up Tumendembaro here and either get a club and sub victory or go on to get a submission victory, where I feel damn confident in the South Korean fighter here, as he is the far superior fighter in all aspects of MMA. Obviously, Tumendembaro has the nuclear option. He does have a ton of power in his hands, but I think the intelligence and speed of Park will allow him to stay out of too much danger here from the Mongolian fighter, thus making me believe that Hyun-Sung Park is chalk-worthy. The next spot here we're going to be talking about is Killen Salkild coming in at minus 650 going up against Anshul Jubli. Now, Salkild will be making his UFC debut here as he is coming off of a dominant Contender Series performance over Gage Young that earned him his contract to the UFC. I believe Gage Young was a far tougher matchup than what Salkild will be facing this weekend, and I believe we'll see Salkild control all aspects of this matchup. I think he's the more vicious Muay Thai striker here, and I think his BJJ black belt will come in handy, as I think he'll eventually look to get this fight to the ground, and I think that should open up a submission opportunity for him. Thus, I'm going to go with Salkild as a chalk-worthy spot. With that said, at minus 650, minus 700, that's usually my cap. I won't advise parlaying anything worse than those props, no matter the skill discrepancy, because of the volatility of the sport of mixed martial arts. But I believe the skill gap here warrants Salkild as a potential parlay piece, hence being chalk-worthy in this spot. Next up, Kevin Jousset coming in at minus 250, going up against Jonathan McAuliffe. Fun fight here. Jousset obviously looking to get back into the win column after his last loss to Brian Battle. And McAuliffe looking to make good on his first UFC fight after earning his contract through the Contender Series this past season. I do believe Jousset's judo background will allow him to keep this fight upright, just as we saw him do in the fight against Brian Battle. And from there, I think he is the superior striker, and I just do not think McAuliffe has the pace or pressure that Brian Battle was able to impose on Jousset. Hence why we'll see McAuliffe start to slow down, give up some takedown attempts. I think he'll very much struggle in terms of getting this fight to a spot where he feels comfortable, and that will allow Jousset to dictate the pace with his striking, with his calf kicks, slowly picking apart McAuliffe and eventually winning this fight on the scorecards. It might be a little bit closer than the odds indicate to a lot of people because of the time that McAuliffe might be able to eat off the clock with the takedown attempts and the cage clinch, but I think Jousset will do a good enough job in terms of landing damage even while being in the defensive position, and that should be enough for the judges to end up scoring that fight in his favor. Hence why I believe Jousset at minus 250 is chalk worthy. All right, next up, Cody Steele coming in at minus 215, going up against Rong Zhu. Now, I'm a big Cody Steele believer and obviously was able to cash heavy on him as he came into the UFC after a nasty body shot knockout victory over Chasen Blair on the Contender Series. That earned him his contract to the UFC, but now, as a 7-0 MMA prospect, he goes up against a guy who has 31 fights before his 25th birthday in Rong Zhu. I believe Rong Zhu is the superior striker here, and that will allow him to touch up Cody Steele in the striking realm. I've already seen some people saying, hey, Steele can strike, but if he is at a disadvantage there, he's going to look to get this to the ground and utilize his decorative BJJ background, or decorated BJJ background, and that should be enough for him to grind out Rong Zhu. But people are failing to see the improvements that Rong Zhu has made in those aspects of his game, which often shuts down the grappling of his opponents completely, or he's able to quickly work back to his feet. And I have to be honest, I'm not the most impressed with Steele's ability to control opponents on the mat. Once this fight is back in the striking realm, that's where I expect Rong Zhu to start taking over and his damage to start ringing true to the judges, allowing Rong Zhu to win this fight on the scorecards. Hence, I do not believe that Cody Steele is chalk worthy in this spot. Next up, Alexandre Topuria coming in at minus 370, going up against Colby Thickness. Both guys making their UFC debuts here, but Topuria obviously has a lot of shine and anticipation on his name, given that his brother is the featherweight champion of the world right now. Topuria comes into the bantamweight division, showcasing a similar style to his brother, especially over his last 3 fights where he's on a 3-fight winning streak, and that was after a 6-year-long layoff that he took after suffering his first loss back in 2015. Now he's 10 years older than he was when he had lost that fight, physically in much better shape, much more dangerous striker, throws with a lot of power. Again, kind of imitates his brother with how he throws his strikes, but is also very dangerous from that top position as well. Luckily for him, he's been going up against very abysmal competition on the regional scene, which has allowed him to pull off 3 back-to-back victories in the first round, but now he'll be facing somebody with legitimate experience and somebody that could provide some actual resistance. Now, I believe Topuria wins this matchup, but I think it ends up coming down to him landing that big shot and putting Thickness away within a round and a half. But if he's unable to get Thickness out of there and the footwork of Thickness allows him to stay safe at distance, will Topuria go 15 minutes and look effective over the course of those 15 minutes compared to when we saw him lose his last matchup, his lone professional loss, where he gassed out and he got finished in the second round of his fight. I believe Topuria wins. I think the way to approach it would be Topuria inside the distance or Topuria by knockout. I believe that's where you'll be able to get the most, juice for the squeeze. Thus, just my question marks about Topuria's cardio is kind of keeping me off wanting to play him as such a big favorite here. So at minus 370, I'm going to have to say Topuria is not chalk worthy. Again, I think he wins. But I think the better play here would be to take him inside the distance, as I think he can land on Thickness and put him away. But if Thickness's durability ends up holding up here and he goes 15 minutes, this fight will end up looking much closer than the minus 370 indicates. So once again, I believe Alexandre Topuria is not chalk worthy in this spot. Next up, Wang Kong coming in at minus 450, going up against Bruna Brasil. Now Wang is looking to bounce back off of her first professional loss last time around when she came up short against Gabriela Fernandez, who was getting pieced up for about a round and a half before she ended up landing a big shot on Wang, which dropped Wang and eventually led to that club and sub victory for the Brazilian fighter. And I think that was great work from Fernandez to quickly jump on the back of Wang once Wang was rocked, and that allowed her to sink in that choke a lot easier than it would have been had Wang just gotten taken down. Normally, Wang's defense in the grappling realm holds up pretty well, which allows her to operate in the striking realm where she actually has a credited background, and that's where she's been able to touch up most of her opponents. Brasil was able to pull off an upset victory last time around against Molly McCann and looked the best that we've ever seen her. And I think a lot of that had to do with her teaming up with the Fighting Nerds. I believe we'll see her unlock her potential here, and she could potentially even get another victory and pull off another upset if she's able to get the victory over Kong here. But I think we'll see Kong do a good job in terms of being a little bit more disciplined, being a little bit more active, and outstriking Brasil on the feet. If Brasil looks to go for the takedowns, I don't think she'll be successful with it, and I think Wang will showcase her solid defensive grappling. It will have to be another club and sub situation if Brasil looks to get her to the ground here. But I'm going to go with Wang here. I think she wins, but I don't think she's chalk worthy at minus 450. Brasil could be breaking through to another level here under the Fighting Nerds, but I need to see more consistent performances from her before I'm willing to take the plunge on her as an underdog once again. I won't bat an eye at anybody looking to take them plus 350 on the Brazilian fighter, but in this spot, I would recommend not taking the chalk on Kong Wang. Hence, she is not chalk worthy for me, even though I think she wins this matchup. All right, next up, Gabriel Santos coming in at minus 225, going up against Jack Jenkins. Now, Santos is looking to build upon his dominant victory over Yi Jia last time around as he goes up against a very dangerous and, a guy that's full of a lot of potential with Jack Jenkins. I think Jenkins is one of the better prospects to come out of the oceanic scene, given his striking capabilities, his calf kicking, and even his grappling. But I think Santos is just a little bit more dangerous in every aspect of MMA compared to Jack Jenkins. I think we'll see Santos touch him up on the feet, batter that lead leg, check the calf kick correctly, and even if this fight gets into the grappling realm, I think Santos is a little bit more dangerous with his elbows, with his ground and pound, and with his submission game. At minus 225, I believe Santos is chalk-worthy here. Jenkins is not too far off from Santos, and I wouldn't blame anybody who believes this fight ends up playing out closer than the odds indicate, but I believe Santos wins this at a decent enough clip that he is chalk-worthy at minus 225. Next up, Jake Matthews coming in at minus 220, going up against Francisco Prado. Now, this is the matchup that I had the most trouble in terms of trying to figure out whether I believe Matthews is chalk-worthy or not chalk-worthy. He's fallen a little bit too much in love with his hands, which has gotten him in trouble in past fights, but I was impressed to see him go to his grappling in the third round of his last matchup against Phil Rowe. And if he can get to that once again here against Prado, I think he looks even way better than minus 220. Prado's coming up in weight, has obviously some nasty knockout power that you might be able to exploit here from Matthews. But if Matthews plays this smart and tries to get into that game planning mentality, he should be able to get this fight to the ground and from there do work from that top position. I think that will allow him to wear down Prado long enough that the majority of the knockout power from Prado will start to dwindle by the time Matthews decides to start striking with him a little bit more in deep water. It's tough to fully trust that he'll be able to go into this matchup with that mentality, which is why it was hard for me to figure out whether I would want to take the chalk on him or not. But I ultimately come to the conclusion that I believe he is chalk-worthy. He is way more experienced than Prado. He's been in the UFC since Prado was 11 or 12 years old. He is obviously the much more skilled grappler here, and his striking is decent enough to stay safe, but he cannot exchange in the pocket for too long, otherwise Prado will make him pay. But I'm still going to go with calling Matthews chalk-worthy here, and I'm really hoping that he gets to his grappling to get it done. And that now skips us right to the main event, as the next chalk spot is Dricus du Plessis looking to defend his middleweight title for the second time as he takes on the man that he won the title from, Sean Strickland. Now, du Plessis comes in at minus 200, a far cry from the number that he was when he initially challenged for the title, where the odds were a little bit closer to a pick'em. Now, if you guys remember, that first fight was very close. It came down to a split decision, and it seemed that 2 of the 3 judges ended up scoring rounds 2, 3, and 4 in favor of du Plessis, allowing him to win the title that night. But Strickland's awkward striking style with his pace and his pressure and his striking defense has always made it difficult for opponents to stick to their game. If Strickland can bite down on the mouthpiece a little bit more, continue to showcase his durability and walking opponents down, he might be able to make this close once again and possibly get the title away from du Plessis. I was about to say wrestle away. I could see him wrestle here and there, but I don't think that's going to be the crux of his game plan for this matchup. I think Strickland has more than all the tools to go out there and give du Plessis a very tough night. And if he just picks up the pace a little bit more, maybe he allows him to make it a little bit more convincing for the judges should this fight go the full 15 minutes. My pick is actually Strickland to win this matchup. At plus 175, I find it hard not to take a shot on him, especially after seeing how close the first matchup was. Thus, I do not believe Dricus du Plessis is chalk-worthy in this spot. There you guys go. Chalk or not, pretty even split here with the guys that I'm willing to back at that big price tag and the guys that I'm not. Take my advice for what you guys want, put it up against your notes, and make your final decision on which spots you're looking to parlay and which spots you're looking to avoid, and just kind of just watch from the outside, or even take a shot on the underdog as well. All right. I will be back tomorrow for the quick picks version of the UFC 312 breakdown, not to mention also the Legacy Warriors podcast, where I'll be talking about LFA 201, breaking down that 15 fight card that goes down in Brazil. See you guys then. Peace.